this is Rich Talks Records, episode 10. And today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Today we will be discussing one album and one album only, and that is the incredible 1979 masterpiece by Marianne Faithfull, Broken English. This is the American cover. I'll be getting into that in a second. But before anything else, I have many videos. I have a lot of irons in the fire right now, and they're ambitious in terms of, not in terms of the format of this. Like, I'm not going to have like crazy graphics or anything, because quite simply I can't be bothered, but ambitious in the sense of the amount of listening I have to do, and then turning that into, articulating that, and figuring out how I want to articulate that. So while all of those other things are taking place, I thought I would do, because previously, if you've watched other episodes, and you should, I focus on either eras of an artist or whole discographies. And so one of the things I wanted to start doing is start doing one-off albums, either where there's not necessarily an era that I really want to get into, or the whole discography is large and would take a lot of videos, and certain parts of it I'm not really that into. So I thought this would be a great first video for just like a one-off album, especially for an album this exceptional. Though that I should note that Marianne Faithfull, I do not want to damn with faint praise. Marianne Faithfull is an exception. Marianne Faithfull is an exceptional artist, both before and after this, and she's had a fascinating kind of late period phase. But initially, Marianne got started in the 60s, and she was kind of a product of the established English music industry. So a lot of her albums, or a lot of her music was Mike Leander and young Gus Dudgeon, and a lot of those kinds of names, studio musicians. I mean, she was a professional singer, and aspiring actress. So, but that being said, the thing with Marianne Faithfull was really two things. I mean, the idea of having a pretty girl singing love songs. Marianne Faithfull, her choice of material early on was always idiosyncratic and interesting and challenging, in part because Marianne Faithfull was not pretty. Marianne Faithfull was stupefyingly beautiful, and her voice was not a good singing voice. Her voice was an incredibly magnificent instrument of, like, soprano, I think she's a soprano. If she isn't, we'll say she is. Soprano purity. So you have this unbelievable voice and this unbelievable, physical form. And the only other person that I can sort of think of where it's that sort of level of combination would be Jim Morrison. The idea that somebody looks like that and sounds like that at the same time, that is pretty extraordinary. So, I really like her 60s records. Like, they're really cool, but they are, they can be a little staid and a little conventional. But they are amazing, and her voice is amazing. Also amazing is her a cappella appearance in Godard's Made in the USA. Now, as the 60s went on, Marianne Faithfull became... Oh, and here's the greatest hits record. Yes. That I got at some point along the way. Marianne Faithfull became Mick Jagger's girlfriend. And she transformed him and he transformed her. She wanted to become more of an auteur artist, and she influenced Mick tremendously in terms of his lyric writing and his influences. So, Mick never would have written Sympathy for the Devil without Marianne, So she is, she's an amazing, amazing part of I consider her like one of the satellite Stones, in the same way that like Andrew Loog Oldham is, and Anita Pallenberg. They had these incredible, Robert Fraser, like they had these amazing people around them who bolstered their creativity and pushed them further. An interesting sort of the double helix of Mick's image aspiring, because he had just finished working on the film Performance, and as she's becoming more of an auteur of her work, is on this, and now you'll forgive me, I forget the name of the bloody song she does. She's amazing in this. This is the Rock and Roll Circus. And why can I not remember the name of the damn song she does? Something Better. And she worked on that with Jack Nietzsche, and Barry Mann and Jerry Goffin wrote the song, and it's just such a great song, and her performance in this is just totally arresting, because again, she's visually so striking. She has the material. It's not conventional pop material by that point, and she just sings it in such a like kind of perfect otherworldly way. So she got kind of chewed up by the industry, and I don't think, I think there were, a lot of people in the Stones world, like their producer Jimmy Miller and stuff, Stones world was rough on a lot of people. Brian literally died, it chewed up a lot of people. And I think Marianne got sort of caught up in that. So in the same way that Jimmy Miller got chewed up, I think she did too. And her voice was starting to change by the late '60s, but like by '73, her appearance in in Bowie's 1980 Floor show, where she's in the weird exaggerated avant-garde nun's habit and they duet on I Got You Babe. Like this is not the effervescent, sparkling young woman, the perfect otherworldly ingenue of the '60s. There's a lot going on there, and there's a lot of weird darkness, and as great as that performance is for its sheer strangeness, I also feel that she's somewhat uncomfortable with the sheer campiness of it, because it doesn't really suit her. So Broken English. So Marianne had a lot of drug problems, as was common in Stone's world, and wound up being homeless and suffering, some pretty serious indignities. And the record that she made previous to this, Dreaming My Dreams, I liked that record. It's kind of countrypolitan, but it's perfectly good, and she sings it very, very, very well, and in a more conventionally beautiful way. But like I said, her voice was already changing and was becoming less conventionally beautiful, or maybe to phrase it the way I would, it was becoming less pretty and more really beautiful in a different way, beautiful in a beautiful way, perhaps. So by 1979, she makes this absolutely phenomenal album. Now, this is the American version. I got this because I'm an American and I live in America. I don't know if you could tell that. But the British version of this album, it's the same photo, but it's blue and the tip of the cigarette is orange and the text is yellow. And it's gorgeous, and I'm going to use that as the JPEG for the video, because it's amazing. But this is pretty goddamn good. This is and there she is on the back cover. Look at that. Look at that woman, huh? That is a tough as nails fucking survivor. The real survivor. Everybody's a survivor now, but this is an actual survivor. The cover was done by Dennis Morris. This would have been the year after he did the first Public Image Limited album, and I think you can see, there's a very similar aesthetic. This is often considered her new wave album, and there might be some truth to that. New wave, post-punk, sure. But the thing about this album, and part of the mastery and genius of this album, is that it incorporates a lot, it synthesizes a lot of strands, and I'm going to get into that. So, in some ways, sure, if you want to say new wave or post-punk and you really want to be super, if you really want to reduce it, sure. But it's a lot more expansive than that, and a far, far deeper artistic statement than Marianne goes new wave. I mean, it feels insulting to phrase it that way. Because it is so much more. So this record was produced by, and I have to look the cat's name up. It was produced by Mark Miller Mundy, and I had never heard of this guy. I should say, I got this record, this would have been a early to mid 90s purchase. Again, kind of like Zombie Birdhouse, same record store, kind of like Zombie Birdhouse. I couldn't believe that this was just sitting in the F's one day. how did this just pop up? There it was. And so, but the reason I knew about this record at all was because of, again, the 1992 Rolling Stone album guide. This album was a critical favorite in its day. And, even though it was a critic's favorite, and I think they gave it 4 stars in that book, kind of a little condescending. A little condescending. And so, I don't like to condescend to great art and great artists. So, hopefully I can do this justice. Anyway, Mark Miller Mundy, I had to look this guy up. I really didn't know who the hell he was. He mostly produced Steve Winwood albums. And I will charitably say, post-Traffic, I like Traffic a lot, especially early psychedelic Traffic. Here it is on Island Records. And look at that beautiful blue label. Gorgeous, isn't it? Post-Traffic, and especially post-psychedelic Traffic, I am not the biggest Steve Winwood fan. As a child of the 80s, growing up hearing Give Me a Higher Love 800 times against my will at everywhere from swimming pools to dentist offices, really gave me a bum take on the guy. And, Steve Winwood plays on this a lot. He's one of the main things you hear, and I have to say, bum take revised, because I will say this is the best thing he did after playing on Voodoo Child. Steve is incredible on this thing, so I have to give respect where respect is due. All the times I had to sit through Roll With It in music class, Steve, we're good. Love you. And he was in the Traffic, and he was in the fucking Spencer Davis group, and they were awesome. I'm a man, but the Spencer Davis group is one of the best records of the 60s. So, I have to give respect where respect is due. So anyway, but this is not a video, goddammit, about Steve Winwood. And that's the other thing. When he was playing on this is like Valerie era Steve Winwood, right? So. Yeah, not my favorite music ever made, I'll charitably say. But god damn it, he brings the goods on this. Okay, so the other most important person on this record obviously Marianne is the most important, but is her songwriter and collaborator Barry Reynolds. So he plays a lot of the guitar on this, and he co-writes all of the songs that aren't covers. I think he has a hand in the writing, I want to say. So let's just get into it. The first song is the title song, Broken English, and really the mission statement of the album. And that's another thing I have to say. There is a short film of Broken English Witches Song and the Ballad of Lucy Jordan. So the kind of all run together, 12 minutes, short film that was made to promote this, made by Derek Jarman. So Derek Jarman did some cool stuff with Throbbing Gristle. And this is like prime time peak Derek Jarman, avant-garde experimental filmmaker, like genius stuff. And I will definitely put a link to that video below, because it's just fucking amazing. So, and maybe I'll use that as the segue to talk about the title song. So in the video, Marianne is, who a lot of people focused on her looks. I think Michael Nesmith called her kind of in awe in the 60s. He called her the ultimate rock and roll mama. She's a very different figure by this point. And, older, wiser, stronger. And it's interesting because in the video, she's walking around. She's not in it much, but she has a very, very, very short black skirt, and the blonde hair is tousled, and she has a black leather jacket on, and and heels, and is like walking around. And it's interesting because it doesn't read as sexy so much as it reads as cool, tough, smart, intriguing. And it's interesting because it's like a different way. Like her former beau, Mick Jagger, at this time was still very much kind of playing the Lothario, and had kind of aged from sort of teen idol into Lothario. Even though she's dressed in a sexy way, there's some sort of, I don't know, there's some sort of rough-hewn dignity to it. She just looks fucking great. And it's a cool, interesting way for her to age out of her like ultimate perfect looking woman era of the 60s. Like, she looks, again, because it wasn't about pretty, it was about beauty. So she's beautiful in like a whole new way, and so even though it's just her walking around and like walking around a fountain, like there's like weird depth to it, So anyway, but that's the video. This is music. So the song, first of all, is she co-wrote with Humphreys, and the rhythm section is fucking fantastic. It's like a really, really good groove. It's a great groove. I don't know, partially that weird 70s thing that happened by the end, where it's not funk, it's not disco, it's not reggae, it's not post-punk, it's not rocking, it is its own cool, minimalist, to use a critic's kind of word, percolating groove. Great little busy bass line, great synths, Mr. Winwood, and then over the top of it, she had still been able to sing in a more conventional manner, but now this is the debut of her new voice. And her new voice is the voice of, like, I don't know, it's like the voice of it's ageless. Not that it sounds young, but she could be 80, she could be 60, she could be 40, she could be a blues singer from the 20s. She could be late period Billie Holiday. It is the voice is craggy and rough, but absolutely, utterly magnificent. And what is so cool is that she is in full command of it. And I feel like, like as like Dylan's voice aged, for instance, I think he had a lot of rough years in the 80s trying to figure out what to do with this thing. And part of what's so impressive is Marianne, in the space of a year, like figured it out and just unveiled this thing in grand fashion. And her voice, this is, if people talk about new wave and post-punk with this album is like some ultimate weird combination of, Some Girls' New Values, Sinatra's Only the Lonely, and Marvin Gaye's Here My Dear. It's, so the other thing is, I should say, this is dark, pulsing nighttime music. And the record is just so, just initially introduced as just serious and intense and exciting and just dark. The lyrics are that, which I would have to assume are Marianne's. I have no reason to think that anybody else wrote the lyrics. The lyrics are something that wound up becoming a real 80s cliche in the hands of people like Sting and Bono. This is, it's an anti-war, anti-Cold War, Russian, Russian-American Cold War thing. And in the hands of a lot of other people, it just became over-earnest, embarrassing, absurd. This is poetry. It's brilliantly rendered. And part of what is so cool about what Marianne pulls off lyrically is that she hits the exact correct center spot. First of all, her lyrics are very shorn of a lot of poetic devices or flowery language. And she hits this exact perfect center point between let's say the voice of the common man, common concerns, very human concerns, and the voice of the perpetual exile, the voice of the perennial outsider, and someone who is also nationless. It's a protest song for people weary of the power games, and it's a protest song for somebody who understands the way the world really works and knows the people in power over the people in power. And it's just a magnificent song. And it interestingly sets the tone. I feel like at the end of the 70s, as opposed to the 60s, I feel like there were a lot of self-conscious wrapping things up statements. So, Iggy had New Values, the Stones had Some Girls, Neil Young had Rust Never Sleeps. In his own weird way, Bob Dylan sort of did that with Slow Train Coming. And this is one of those. This is Bowie, that you could say that was Bowie's thing with Lodger. That it's just this. And even side 2 of Lou Reed's The Bells, especially. Someday when I review that, I'll get into that. But there is a hard, long look in the mirror aspect to this song and to the overall feel of this whole record. And that the title song just perfectly sets the tone. The next song is Witch's Song. Stark acoustic guitars. That's the other thing about this record. It's dark, it's pulsating, it's nighttime music, but it's also clean and pristine and very much prefigures a lot of the sound of Scary Monsters. And I think if Scary Monsters is more of a date, this is the nighttime album to Scary Monsters' daytime album, if that makes any sense. Witch's song has a bed of really beautiful guitars. And Kate Bush. Like, there's a certain amount of Kate Bush floating around in here, because there is that level of studio musician, ultra high craftsmanship that you wouldn't get on actual punk records or post-punk records. You know, these are people who like really know what they're doing and have chops, and they're funneling it into stark minimalistic shapes, you know. So Witch's song is where the voice is even more breathtaking, because she has to sing kind of long, somewhat longer melodic lines, and it's just absolutely fucking phenomenal. Other than the fact that it's called Witch's Song, I don't know that I would necessarily think that it has anything to do with the occult. However, that, and then like her whispered outro about death and life, it makes the song spookier and smokier, and is kind of a weird decade later counterpart to Sympathy for the Devil. Sympathy for the Devil, what on that is explosive and scary in its intensity. This is like that, except after electroshock, and it's just an absolutely beautiful, breathtaking performance. This is a singer's record. This is and this is Sinatra's, like this is if Frank Sinatra was a woman, and you know, like his late 50s work, or if Betty Davis was a singer, if Betty Davis was a poet and a singer, this is the record that Betty Davis would make. This is Betty Davis level, Sinatra level stuff, right? So the next song is Brain Drain, which is a Tim Hardin song. And Brain Drain is interesting because, and this is one of the things that I suppose is going to kind of come out during this review, is, you know, theoretically it's a song written about a man to a woman, and to an enervating, horrendous human being, a person that has become consumed in wretchedness or addiction, whatever, or both. But what's interesting is the gender flipping of it, and it takes on a whole different weird power about the idea of her saying that she can't buy roses for the guy, you know. And I think it's, you know, I think that that's part of what the power of this record is. There is a refusal to go quietly into that good night. There is a refusal for victimhood. It's like Betty Davis shit. It refuses to exist, no sort of pun intended, under the thumb. And therein lies its power. And it's an individualistic power. It's not, the power lies within the core of the soul or the core of the self. It is not pretending that it will be achieved via mass movements or via some sort of legislative change. And so it's just, but the song is very jazzy and sort of bluesy, but it's the closest that the album gets to sounding like Here My Dear. And the song just sort of goes at this kind of, you know, it's ominous. It's an ominous mood, because you know that you very much get the sense that the situation won't last, and you get the sense that she will break a glass and use it to get this loafer out of the flat if she has to. And so there's, you know, it's an amazing dramatic performance. The lyrics are fantastic, you know, you're like a blood stain. You go on and on. Like, the lyrics are just fantastic. And so and it's an interesting mood piece after like the two openers. So the next song, and the last song on side one is "Guilt," and "Guilt" is so I there are conflicting writing credits. It certainly seems like Marianne's lyrics. There are very, very, very specific. Her lyrics have a certain flavor to them, and a certain specificity of detail that. So on the record and like the official credits or whatever, it's Barry Reynolds' sole writing. On her website, she's listed as co-writer, so it feels like her lyrics, so I have to think that it's hers. So it is, this is a hard song. It's quietly propulsive, which leaves all of the emphasis on her voice and lyrics, and it just a magnificent vocal performance, and tough and real, but there's still sort of a sense of, I don't know, faded ideologies that she's still clinging to, but it's just an amazing piece of writing and performance, and then there's this sort of, again, kind of the sort of jazz, sort of late 70s kind of jazzy bluesy thing sort of comes out, and there's an extended outro and interplay. I guess it would be saxophone, or maybe soprano saxophone, and it's beautiful and relieves some of the tension, because there's no catharsis in the song, and she's pleading her case, and there's a certain amount of, while she's both pleading her case and there's self-recrimination, and it's hard-bitten, realistic stuff. Again, a long exhausted look at the mirror, to use the cliche, sick and tired of being sick and tired, but written far more amazingly than that. So the extended sort of muted soloing is a perfect way to sort of play out the end of side one, as sort of she kind of leaves the stage, so to speak. Flip the record over, and we get the Ballad of Lucy Jordan, which was one of the album singles. And the Ballad of Lucy Jordan was written by Shel Silverstein. That's right, Mr. Giving Tree himself. And it's an amazing song. It's interesting because it's almost a period piece now, because it's that kind of classical liberal sort of perspective that you don't necessarily get in art even anymore, or in songwriting. The sort of the tale of personal liberation. But what's interesting is this song sort of splits the difference between the Beatles' She's Leaving Home. It's not as mawkish as some of parts of that song are. It's a great song, but you know what I mean. And it almost could be like the fantasy or the dreamscape of the woman in Bowie's Repetition. And it's almost all synth. There apparently was a review of it that said it sounded like Dolly Parton being produced by Brian Eno. It's super, super, super minimalist. Another great video for it, where Marianne is sort of the actress alone on the soundstage, kind of embodying the character. But as good as the song is, and as evocative as the song is, really it's all in her voice. This is, she takes a song that hits certain emotional points and turns it into great poetry. She wrings layers and layers and layers of meaning out of it because it's so hard won. And it's, how do I phrase this? Given, if you know anything about her backstory and like the fact that she had been homeless and struggled with drug addiction, that this would be the imaginings of what life on the other side of the struggle would look like. And it gains so much power from, again, stark bellowy, pillowy synths with that voice and that level of intense emotional yearning over the top of it. She sends it out into the fucking stars. It's amazing. Amazing. Beautiful. Beautiful. Again, this is not pretty. Like, the song, that's the difference. I think the song is pretty, right? Or the sentiments are pretty. Marianne gives it fucking beauty. You know? So then the next song is What's the Hurry, which is the most up-tempo we've been since the title track. And What's the Hurry was written by Joe Mavity. I don't know anything about who the hell that is. But it is, the song is, the band gets to sort of, play a little bit more than it has been because they've been so much serving the singer. And there's a little bit like on Guilt where they get to let loose a little bit. But this is, it's not, I wouldn't say that it's rocking, but it's it's just very focused and serious, and the lyrics are very focused and serious. And in the sense that the song Broken English is sort of a statement to the world, this is a statement to self or a statement to a romantic partner, just for emotional reality. And, it also is, in some ways it is a lesser song, because you have, side 2 is so stacked with major songs. I would say that there are 4 major songs on this record, 2 of which I've talked about, 2 of which I'm going to get to. But What's the Hurry is the perfect kind of, it's what an album like this needs, where it's top shelf, very, very high level music making, even if it isn't the sort of next level that the best material is. So I don't want to put it down because it would be the best song or the best performance on somebody else's record. But on this one, it just, it gets us, it brings us out of the Ballad of Lucy Jordan into the sort of culmination finale of this album, and really kind of everything that the album has been building towards. So the penultimate song on the album is Marianne's cover of Working Class Hero. Now, I, as a very major Beatles fan, as a very major John Lennon fan, tend to not want people to cover their songs or his songs, because most of the time they're wildly inferior. I think Wilson Pickett did a really good job on Hey Jude, and I really like Stevie Wonder's version of We Can Work It Out. And that's Richie Havens is Strawberry Fields Forever. But that's about it, generally speaking. I just don't think people know, because I tend to feel like the Beatles / John tended to be the single best interpreters of their own work. So the thing about Working Class Hero, though, is a lot of people have tried to cover it. David Bowie did a not very good job at the end of the 80s. Green Day, I mean, fuck, I don't know what to say about that. But John was never going to do, especially with the minimalist, vision of Plastic Ono Band, John was never going to, like, produce it. Like, it was never going to be like a production. And he was never going to, I just don't think it would have made sense for him to perform the song in any way other than just lone acoustic guitar, However, so Marianne comes along nearly a decade after the song had initially been released, and this is a proper production. This is a proper staging of the song that is just ridiculously powerful. And like the original, it doesn't have to strain, and it doesn't have to go for noise, or it doesn't have to go for histrionics for incredible power. John leans into the power of the song. Marianne leans into the power of her voice. And this has really, it's kind of a burbling bass, and then very stark, clean, stark guitar sort of jump scares, And, but over the top of that, Marianne sings the song like somebody who, it's an eerie, ominous horror film version of the song. And somebody who, it's almost like she took, without the screaming part, it's almost like she took the aura of John's Mother, the performance of Mother, but applied it to Working Class Hero over this amazing, stark, late 70s sound, which is a truly amazing sound that you're just playing with that much reverb and you're that willing to kind of sing out into the void. It's an incredible performance, and the way she just, even if you, like me, have heard the song 10,000 times, the way the verses just keep coming, it's like another wave of painful truth hitting you. And but again, though, like Guilt, like Brain Drain, like Witch's Song, but there is no catharsis. It's just a summing up of what life has been. And I don't know if the story is apocryphal or not, but I feel like I've read it in a couple places that Marianne mailed a copy of the album to John and Yoko in the Dakota. They were, of course, during the retirement years. And from what I understand, Yoko was always a big fan of Marianne, and Yoko and Marianne got on very well, was always my understanding. But apparently when John and Yoko listened to the album and then listened specifically to Working Class Hero, the stories that I've read are that they wept upon hearing it. They were both so deeply moved. And I don't know that John's song could get a greater tribute than, I don't know if John's art and ethos, and artistic fucking legacy could get a better tribute than her performance of what could arguably be the single best song he ever wrote. And yet the album is already so magnificent and already so perfect and brilliant, and it hasn't even gotten to the ultimate. It reaches the ultimate crescendo with the closing song, the near 7-minute "Why'd You Do It?" It's the down and dirtiest. It's the dirtiest the album gets. It's the closest it leans in more to the Some Girls vibe. it gets dirty in the same way that parts of New Values get dirty. But both this album and New Values exist in a very clean environment, and so the dirt is that much more striking. But this is just, it doesn't rock. It's a dirge in the best sense, and it's the song that Marianne leans the hardest into the cracks and fissures and crags of her voice, and it is just endlessly expressive, and the self-recrimination is real, but the accusatory aspects of it are real. I remember the line that William Burroughs had, if you want to hear real passion, you should listen to Leadbelly. I think especially in the age of, we have, the interchangeable Pop-Tarts, the endless parade of interchangeable Pop-Tarts. We also have had an endless parade of interchangeable ululating indie singers, and this blows all of them out of the water. I mean, this, part of the thing with the endless parade of Pop-Tarts is, as they gained autonomy, they became more synthetic. They became more human corporations. They went from fake to faker. And the ululating indie people are just content to please the same 12 idiots, who are angry on the internet every single minute of their lives. This is the true sound of blood and guts and passion and fire and genius and emotional reality, because she still loves the person, she's disgusted by the person, she's disgusted with herself for putting up with this fucking shit, she's jealous of there's so many angles and dimensions to the song, and so many different ways you can look at it, even down to the "why'd you do it, she said." She makes it third person, though it's fucking first person, and it's almost like her version of God. It's almost like her version of just the Purge. She never full on screams. It never goes, the squalls of the guitar hint at kind of going over the edge. It never fully goes over the edge, but it stays right near it, and instead it just goes on and on, and she keeps just dredging up more and more details. So in the same way that the awful truths of Working Class Hero keep piling on, this achieves a similar effect with just awful, painfully specific details. And there's an occasional awkwardness to it, but it's the awkwardness of someone standing their ground. It's the awkwardness of somebody refusing to shut up, and who's fucking angry for a reason. It's the real goddamn deal. It's blood and guts and fire and just, it's just intensity and true emotional honesty. And, she kind of, like the end of side one with Guilt, she kind of vacates around 5.5 minutes in, and the rest of the album just kind of plays out. The backing singers sort of take over, and that again has its own sort of power to it, kind of like Lou Reed's Heavenly Arms, where he stops and Fernando Saunders sort of comes in. She's had enough, and walks out of the frame. It's incredible. It's the capstone to a magnificent artistic achievement and one of the truly great singing achievements. So it's right up there with Sinatra's Only the Lonely or September of My Years or the Wee Small Hours. It's right. It's that level. And again, just it's so interesting because it weaves together sort of country music kind of aesthetics, especially that level of emotional honesty. There's the modern new wave thing. It sounds at times like what Grace Jones was doing, and prefigures what she would be doing on the like on the night clubbing album. And yet it, you know, and yet it also has a foot in Public Image Limited's Metal Box. So the idea that you have this album that touches upon or that synthesizes all of these sort of different strands of rhythm and blues and jazz and country and different types of rock and roll and post-punk and even, you know, experimental music, held together by a ridiculous, unbelievable virtuoso vocal performance rooted in beauty, hard-won wisdom, and again, emotional reality. You know, the truly the purging for the sake of truth, the quest for truth, absolute truth. That's what this album is. It is one of the greatest albums ever made. And Marianne has done some great work after this, but, you know, she referred to this as her definitive album, her definitive recording, and I think you would be absurd to disagree. This is it. This is truly, 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 truly for the ages. So, I am actually filming this after I had already finished the main video. The one thing I forgot to mention that I meant to is the one thing that I meant to mention that I forgot to is the song Sister Morphine. The original 60s recording of Sister Morphine is on this CD reissue of Come My Way. And I think it's on a greatest hits somewhere. But Sister Morphine was done in 1969. Jagger, so written by Jagger Richards, but most of the lyrics by Marianne. And it was going to be sort of the next stage of her, you know, artistic maturity. And the song basically got banned. And then the Stones recorded it, and I don't know what was going on with that, but her name was taken off the credits. So she later had to sue and get her name restored to the writing credits, because it was her song. It was her song as much as it was theirs. The 1960s version is incredible. It's as good as what is on Sticky Fingers. However, the 12-inch B-side, the 12-inch mix B-side, which is slightly longer, of Broken English, the B-side is a re-recording of Sister Morphine that, and weirdly, I've already referenced this before, but just in terms of recontextualizing and minimalist power, it is the equal of what Bowie did with the 79 Space Oddity. It is really powerful, really amazing. In a perfect world, it might have found a home on the album, but I don't know where. But it is an incredible kind of addition to this masterpiece, and if you are at all interested, you should totally go and seek it out, because it is as equally stunning as anything on the album proper. So I would be remiss if I did not mention that. So, I hope that you've enjoyed this kind of one-off video. I have, as I said, I have many, many more that are in various stages of development. I nearly did this almost was a boredoms video, and the stumbling block, I was going to do the boredoms in the 80s, and the stumbling block was how to incorporate the Boretronics releases. So that was the only reason, that's the only reason this didn't wind up being a boredoms video. It almost was a Richard Hell video, and then I found out, I somehow had missed this, that there was yet again another new version of Destiny Street. And I was like, damn it. So I have to go to listen to that. So The Boredoms, Richard Hell, but many, many others that I don't want to give away any surprises. Those will all be coming soon. So anyway, the light's blinking. It's time for me to go. I hope that you've enjoyed all of this. And, like and comment and subscribe. And, just thank you for watching. And I will see you all next time. Bye.
Just finished watching Rich Talks Records.